Hello and welcome to Talking Templars. I'm Tony McMahon.
And I'm Dr. Steve Tibble.
And today we're going to be looking at a topic I know that interests many of you, though I think many mainstream historians will roll their eyes in their sockets at this one. But it's the connection between the Knights Templar and the Holy Grail. Now, for the record, it's something that features in my book, The Knights Templar History and Mystery. A lot of people say, there's no connection. I think the idea that the Templars literally owned the Holy Grail, I think we can definitely question that. But I think the Arthurian chroniclers, or particularly I'm thinking of Wolfram von Eschenbach, who was the German chronicler. These Arthurian chroniclers were often working for crusader nobles, and I think the Arthurian romances that they told, the whole romances they told about King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, and the way they linked to the Holy Grail, although these Arthurian chroniclers don't seem to agree on what exactly the Holy Grail is, but we'll come to that in a moment. Is it a cup? Is it a plate? Is it a stone? We don't know what it is. But I think that especially in the case of von Eschenbach, he references something called the Templars Knights, which are knights who guard the Grail Castle. And some people have said, oh, the etymology is wrong. But I think he means the Templars. I find it hard to believe he doesn't. And I think that the Arthurian Chronicles are basically a way of these storytellers sucking up to their bosses and saying, you're just like King Arthur and your mates are just like it's a propaganda piece.
Those two words, there's a big difference, isn't there? Chronicles and stories. Yes,
Yes, they're not chronicles, they're stories. Yes, that is an important thing. And it is a story that develops. I mean, it's very interesting that, we start with Geoffrey of Monmouth, Chrétien de Troyes, writes one of the definitive accounts, though incomplete. Interestingly, Chrétien de Troyes comes from Troyes, where many of the Templars come from. Apparently may have been a Jewish convert. That's one of the kind of stories around him. So, just a quick Templar ad break now to tell you about Downfall of the Templars by Tony McMahon. This book covers the thrilling events around the trials of the Knights Templar in 1307, leading up to the execution of the last Grand Master in 1314. Make sure to get your copy at Amazon, Waterstones, and other outlets. But he's a Christian of Troy, and then it's Wolfram von Eschenbach who writes this Germanic version where we have the Templars guarding the Holy Grail. And as I say, there is no agreement about what the Grail is. Sometimes it's a cup, sometimes it's a plate. It could be a stone that came out of the crown of Lucifer when he was thrown out of
I often
heaven.
Think that, yes.
Think that.
Yeah. No, but, or an idea. The trouble is, well, there's two things really. One is these are all written after the Crusades. They're already drifting into legend. The Templars have already gone by this point. But they're also stories. So the fact that it's an old story doesn't make it evidence or proof.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an old story of a time that was already old when this fable was written. So I would put it in the realm of good fun, jolly interesting, but fabulous, literally. So what makes you, Tony, why do you think that would constitute evidence?
I think the point here is that my beef basically on the Arthurian stories, chronicle stories, is that, a lot of people have spent a lot of time and ink trying to prove, for example, that King Arthur was a Roman general or a Dark Ages warlord or whatever. I just don't buy it. I think King Arthur was a kind of fictional representation of the ideal crusader king, and his knights around him are the ideal crusader knights. And after all, they're on this crusade for the Holy Grail. And if you want, it's kind of adding an element of nobility to what was often quite a sordid
treasure hunting
endeavour. Yes, to a treasure hunt, basically. So I think that's kind of what lies behind. I mean, some of the Arthurian romances do kind of overlap with the Templar period, but as you say, a lot of it obviously comes afterwards. But I think it's this attempt to kind of give a kind of chivalric, noble gloss to the Crusades. I think that's its primary function.
as a Crusader historian, and at the risk of sounding pedantic, a crusade is obviously an expedition to the Middle East where you get remission of sins for all the good work you're doing. So treasure hunting around different parts of Europe probably wouldn't constitute a crusade. I mean, you wouldn't. I don't think any pope would, give you remission of sins for that. I mean, it's a chivalric adventure, or a quest. Yeah, and I don't know how often they call it crusades, but I think technically they weren't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's still the idea, of course. We have to say, of course, we should really say what the Holy Grail is supposed to be, and it's worth pointing out that the Holy Grail, as most of us understand it, this idea of a cup, really hangs on a lot of apocryphal biblical stuff about the uncle or great uncle of Jesus, who is Joseph of Arimathea, and this idea that Joseph has this cup. I mean, it's a good it's an example of the kind of medieval apocrypha that kind of gathered around the Bible. And Joseph of Arimathea, he takes this cup. It's been used at the Last Supper by Jesus, and then he uses it to gather blood from the side of Christ at the crucifixion. I mean, there's all sorts of stories that arise, in the Middle Ages, that Joseph came to England, that he may have come here with the young Jesus.
In fact, he was Cornish, as was Jesus, probably.
And do you know that they were mining for tin and lead in Somerset? That's one story that's out there.
Yeah, well, Roman, I think that could actually be true. The Romans certainly had mines down there.
They did.
Yeah, I guess the other thing to throw in the pot is whether people believed in the Crusades that there was a Holy Grail. Did the Crusaders believe in the Holy Grail? And I think there is some evidence that they did. I mean, you find one of the wonderful things that happens when the Crusaders are trying to roll up all the different coastal cities, which are still in Muslim hands in the first half of the 12th century, a lot of them were, was the fact that they always needed support. They needed Italian ships, Italian fleets to blockade these cities. And these Italians they're kind of all private equity guys. They're the most hard-headed, rational people you can imagine in a pious age. But there is this one instance where one of the cities is captured, and I think it's Genoa. There's a Genoese fleet blockading it. And then there's a very standard system of remuneration. So if the Italians help out, they get a quarter in the city, and they get various trading rights. And the Genoese, in this instance, traded their entire quarter of a potentially huge maritime investment and the investment of their own people's lives that they'd lost in the course of the siege for a green glass cup, which I'm told is still around today. It's in the treasury of the cathedral in Genoa. So if even hard-headed people like that could believe in it, then clearly, it's not to say that it was a Holy Grail or that there ever was a Holy Grail, but that people at the time believed in it.
Yeah, and of course, we know, of course, that the saintly King Louis brought back the crown of thorns at enormous expense to the French exchequer. I mean, they did. No,
it's extraordinary.
And housed
half
it
of the country's GDP.
And they put it in this Sainte-Chapelle, which you can still see today. This beautifully illuminated chapel, but that cost a mint. And I can't imagine the average French peasant, even despite how pious they may have been, would have been delighted by that. But interestingly, that Genoese, I mean, there are several Holy Grails around Europe.
Of course, of course. Many bits of the True Cross and many thorns.
And many thorns. And I believe I'm right in saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, that the Genoese cup, when the Napoleonic armies came into Italy, we're talking about early 19th century, now they actually sent that cup back for analysis to Paris, but when it was sent back to Genoa, the Parisian scientists or whatever actually managed to break it into several pieces. So poor old Genoa, I believe the cup is still there, but it's now patched together thanks to the Napoleonic armies.
12-piece goblet set.
It is. It's got a goblet set. I mean, so I think in terms of the Templars having a literal cup, but that association, of course, has been made, and we see it expressed in the Indiana Jones movie, with a Templar guarded cup. It's become really fixed in people's minds now that they had it.
I can't think of any evidence, any primary sources, any contemporary sources that make that link. Even Indiana Jones, I don't think they're Templars, isn't there? There's a knight from the Second Crusade who who's there. But you're right. In the popular imagination, there is this linkage with the Templars, but in the same sense that there are so many conspiracy theories and legends, I believe it's a confection. It's got some ingredients, but nothing that would stand up.
In fact, another pop culture reference, I think it's the Netflix drama series Nightfall.
Yes.
Yes. The opening scene is them spiriting the Holy Grail out of AK.
Yeah, and they take it down through that tunnel, which is fabulous. It's just been re-excavated. So they definitely did have a tunnel. And you can make up all these great stories about, smuggling these fabulous goods through this secret tunnel. It actually, in reality, it appears, the tunnel goes from their compound down to the port. The conspiracy answer to what is that tunnel about is, well, you've got to have somewhere to take the Holy Grail. The more prosaic answer is it's tax avoidance, because if it lands and has to be transported through somebody else's compound, which it would have been, you pay duties. If it lands at a Templar wharf and then is whisked underground, you can bring your wine in and not pay duty on it. So, being a cynic, I'd say tax avoidance rather than Holy Grail.
For those of you lucky enough to live in the United Kingdom, Templar history is all around you. Dr. Steve Tibble looks at the knights who made Britain. The evidence is in the landscape, it's in town names, it's in the very fibre of our being as Britons. So find out all about the Knights Templar in Britain. Get your copy on Amazon, Waterstones and other outlets. But then, of course, if we're looking at another group of people who thought the Templars did have the Holy Grail, we, of course, have to mention the Nazis. And we have Hitler, but even more so Heinrich Himmler and his absolutely bonkers division of the SS, the Ahnenerbe, which worked on these kind of racially based theories to prove there was an Aryan master race, blah, blah, blah. But, of course, the tragedy of this is they hire a gay archaeologist, Otto Rahn, R-A-H-N, who is sent on the most bizarre, futile quest. Although he's a medievalist, right? You could say,
it's not all bad.
Yeah, exactly. No. Brought it on himself. But he ends up having to go on this quest around Europe looking for the Templar relics, and he has this kind of bonkers theory that the Templars and the Cathars and the Gnostics are all intertwined versus the Judeo-Christian Church and all this Aryan Jesus nonsense. But ultimately, of course, he doesn't find the Holy Grail and ends up dead on an alpine hillside in very suspicious circumstances.
Tell me more. I'm more interested in the suspicious circumstances.
Well, no, he's basically he goes to Montségur and he goes down to Montserrat down in Barcelona, and Himmler goes down there as well on this quest for the Holy Grail. Ends up going to Iceland, where he thinks he's going to find both the origins of the Aryan race plus Templar treasure, and is very disappointed to just find gift shops and fishermen, and basically ends up back in Germany very disillusioned. Falls out with the Nazis actually, and ends up being sent to Dachau as a prison guard for a while.
Oh, as a guard?
As a guard. Right. So they don't put him in as a prisoner, but it's certainly a demotion. And then basically one day he apparently goes hiking into the Austrian Alps, I think it is, and his body is found by a group of children frozen solid. Now, some people have said, well, if you let Himmler down in your quest for the Grail, you're going to be found frozen stiff on an alpine hillside.
Wow.
But who knows? It's murder or suicide. It's intrigued people ever since.
No, I bet. I bet. But is there any evidence to link the Holy Grail?
So he writes. So Otto Rahn actually wrote two books. He wrote two books, quest, his about his quest for the Grail, and I do cover this in Downfall of the Templars.
Good.
There's a whole chapter on Otto Rahn's
riveting read.
Otto Rahn's nonsense on the Grail. But yes, he expounds all these theories and about the Templars and the Grail and the Cathars and yada yada yada. This kind of racialized view of the Middle Ages.
And actually that is interesting. The racial aspect, which is very, very important to the Nazis.
Yes.
The bizarre irony is that there were very few things less important to the Crusaders or the Templars. Yeah. Most people in a Templar army, not the brothers themselves, but most of the other people would have been, either mixed race settlers or Arabs or Christian Syrians or Armenians. That's the ironic thing. It was predominantly, if you look at certainly Templar armies, they're predominantly non-Aryan. I don't even know what Aryan means anymore, but if it ever meant anything.
Yeah.
But that's a particularly strange thing for the Nazis to get involved with.
Well, I mean, it is. And it's, the Nazis, unfortunately, they have begat many modern conspiracy theories. I think people sometimes don't realise the connection between the Nazis and some modern, and we should be very careful when we, expound conspiracy theories that have, you tend to find there's a route that goes from theosophy through the Nazis to modern conspiracy theories, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in future episodes. But the other thing is of course, then the Holy Grail, especially in the late 20th century, we have this kind of all these bonkers theories about the Templars, but it then becomes the bloodline of Jesus Christ, and then we're into Holy Blood, Holy Grail, 1980s best-selling book, which really kind of crystallizes that theory, and then Dan Brown, of course, the Da Vinci Code. But as is so strange, and this is the same with the Arthurian stories, coming back to what we were talking about, you were correcting me to say stories, not chronicles. No. They're stories. But what happens is, with the Templars and with the Holy Grail, is stories become fact.
Yeah.
And it's this bizarre thing where even the stuff that Dan Brown has written moves into sort of factual.
I know, and dear Dan never pretended it was fact. He's writing a work of fiction, and good luck to him. But I think there is that thing, and again, you come back to the Nazis, dear Goebbels. If you tell a lie, tell it big, and if you tell it often enough, some of it will stick. And that.
And of course, to summarise, the idea is that the Templars have been set up by the Priory of Sion,
of course,
to defend the bloodline of Jesus, which is the Holy Grail, which is the Sang Grail, which is the royal blood of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So that's that. Now, I think we can probably agree on the fact that is complete and utter bunkum. For once, I think we're pretty solidly.
We're ahead of the game there.
We're ahead of the game there. I mean, if you have to put a gun to my head and say, what is the Holy Grail? The cup is the most, in terms of being a legendary object.
Yes.
The cup of Christ, I think, is the one that is the most resonant, and has kind of, it fits in with some of the apocryphal stuff that we know about Joseph of Arimathea, but doesn't mean the Templars
had it, or that it ever existed. Yeah. I always think it's better to think of it as an idea. I mean, I understand that it stands for something. It stands as a focus for devotion and a focus for a quest for trying to improve yourself and become holier and so on. That, I think it works, for me, it works better as an idea rather than a piece of, something you might get at home base or whatever.
So we'll leave it there, but it may be, and I'm sure it will be, that many of you disagree profoundly and wish to come to the defence of the Holy Grail and its ownership by the Knights Templar, and please come back and comment. We are happy to have a robust exchange of views, aren't we? We like to
very much so.
We can be robust and but not dismissive. We'll be robust, respectful. So do say what you think on this topic. For now, it's goodbye from me,
and goodbye from me.
And do join us for the next episode. But for now, non nobis domine.